Hey, what is up?
Khufu, I am good. How are you?
Yo, I am excellent, JT. I'm gonna do a little official intro for the people, and then yeah, we'll jump right into it.
Sounds good.
So I'd like to welcome everyone to Money Trees number 9. I am your host, Khufu, joined by the illustrious Jenny Tan. How you feeling, JT?
In great shape. I can't lie. In great shape.
Hey, I love that. I love that. So, for the uninitiated, Jenny is an incredible manager, booking agent, event producer, and I could probably go on, but an all around amazing person. I'll say this.
Thank you.
Yo, Jenny, I kid you not. I don't know if I don't know if I have a better first impression story than the one I have with you, or a first meet story, like I guess whatever you want to call it. I was in Barcelona for Sonar, and we were there with Shoma Josie on tour. And Show's DJ is like, "Yo, we need to go to this party, blah 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 blah." And I'm like, "All right, Barcelona's crazy. Like, it's the middle of the night." And we pull up to this crazy, massive compound. Oh, do you remember the name of it? Was it Pablo?
It was some Pablo Espanol.
Yes. So
Yeah, yeah.
crazy compound. Something, this is my first time overseas. I've never seen anything like this, and it looked like there were maybe 1,000 people trying to get into wherever this spot was. And Show's DJ is just like, "Yo, nah, Jenny's coming to get us." And I'm looking around, and there's like 6 of us, and I'm like, "Yo, there's no way. This line is so crazy." And then she's like, no, I'm telling you, Jenny got us, Jenny got us. And I'm like, all right, let's see. And then, I see someone come out, push past the bouncers are letting her move through, lifting up the freaking velvet ropes to let her out. It's like, all right, who do you got? Boom, boom, introductions, like, "Yo, Jenny, all right, y'all stay with me." She was literally like, it was like buddy system, hand on the shoulder, leading us through this mob of people, straight past everyone, straight past like all of the smaller clubs, into this massive. I don't even know. Like, it's still to this day, I barely know where I was at. It was so insane. Right up to VIP, right behind the DJ booth, and I'm looking out, and I'm in Spain. It's like 3 a.m. and I can't believe that someone just came and grabbed me and 7 other people at this freaking awesome event. And we had such a
Hey, we
great
rocked it.
conversation that night, like, which was wild to be at that party. But I was like, nah, I have to figure out more about this person. Like, I need to know more about who this Jenny was and how she just did this. And yeah, we've been great friends ever since.
Great friends ever since. Absolutely. Like that was a wild night. And I mean so many other wild nights that came after that in terms of going out, and then LA, and then like we've had our fair share of rounds, I must say, by now, Khufu. So it's been great. Thank you so much for having me on Money Trees. I really appreciate it. Since we're doing this second attempt. First attempt failed on bad reception at the beach in Tulum.
But yeah, even that, right? Like, oh man, I was like, JT, can you get on? You're like, man, the connection on the beach here is terrible. And I'm just like,
I was even on Wi-Fi, and it just wasn't. It just wasn't coming on. But I'm glad we're doing it now, because now I'm nicely settled in Mexico City, um, and I'm on stellar Wi-Fi, and nothing's gonna hold us back today.
hell yeah, we are here. And even in the first couple of minutes, we're already hitting on the fact, yo, we're in Barcelona and LA and now Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
So one
Mm-hmm.
of one of the things that night that I knew I'd be able to connect with Jenny on is the fact that she is so well traveled. I mean, you've lived in, what was it, like, it's or now 17 countries?
16 or 17. Yeah, I need to count again, but yeah, I think
Well, I guess
I
counting
think so.
Mexico now, like that would be the
Counting
17th.
exactly. I'm going to count again whether it was from 15 to 16 or from 16 to 17, but yeah, somewhere around that range. Yeah.
I think it's very indicative of just like who you are as a person that loves seeing the world, loves learning about different cultures and finding ways to add value to them. That your newest venture is in touring and that space. And we are going to dive into your new platform, Toorly. But I do have one other story that I think is just kind of crazy. Thinking on how our first time we met was so wild, but also the last time I saw you was a really wild moment because it was the moment when I realized the pandemic was real. And
Right?
I think that everyone
Mm.
kind of had that point where it clicked, where it was like, oh shit, like, wait a second, this isn't going to be quick. And so me and Jenny were both living in LA at the time. And I remember I had tickets, I think it was to the Nets and Clippers that was supposed to happen on a Friday. The Golden State Warriors game gets canceled. Jenny hits me and is like, yo, I have to get out of here because if I don't, I won't be able to go home. Like, they're canceling all the flights. And I'm like, what? Like, what are you talking about? Nah, no way. Like, this isn't a real thing. And yo, that was the last time I saw you.
That was March 12th. I think it was March 11 that Trump passed the travel ban and basically said everybody needs to leave the country by midnight tomorrow. I was like, whoa. So I had this whole place in LA and had just settled in and I really loved it and I wanted to stay and everything. And then all of a sudden it turned into an overnight in fog and wind disappearance act. And yeah, so I saw you. I think I saw you March 12th was like my departure day, which I think was a pretty pivotal day for a lot of people around the world. It was like that was like the day that it happened. I mean, not for Asia. Obviously, Asia was already ahead of the curve at that point. But yeah, that was in fact the last time we saw each other. And when I was waving everybody goodbye from the Uber, and yeah, and I realized that it might end up being a bit of a longer one. But then, Khufu, as you remember, everybody thought this would be over by summer, right? Like we all thought
Yeah,
it was
what?
a
I was like, yeah, give it
yeah,
a month. You'll be back. We'll be kicking it, moving around. Like,
yeah, we'll be back in the summer making plans and all of that. I mean, until today, I have boxes and boxes of moving luggage stored in LA, thinking that any moment from now I'll be back. Um, but yeah, so now I'm just sliding in Mexico before going back to LA at some point.
you went from LA to pretty
Hong
much
Kong.
the complete other side. Yeah,
Yeah, I went
to Hong
straight into the
Kong.
eye of the tiger, so to speak. But that's where my family is based. And yeah, and it turned out, and I can't lie, it turned out that Hong Kong was probably one of the safest places in the world during the pandemic, because it's such a small place and it's so easy to manage. So yeah, it's actually it was a very chill pandemic for me personally, and it just gave us so much more time because as we're speaking about Toorly, of course. Toorly was, we'll speak about it in a bit, but the startup that I had been working on and that I was ready to launch in March 2020, then obviously, now got pushed back by almost 2 years. Who would have thought? But yeah, in the end, everything happens for a reason. There was plenty of more time to get prepped and get ready. And yeah, and there's no better place to be than in a place where you have no FOMO. So, and that's kind of what it was during this whole pandemic.
Man, it's wild to think about how you were so ready to. I remember the conversations we were having about it, and I was excited to start getting many of the artists that I work with onto the platform. So I want to start kind of discussing what the pandemic has done to touring because I know, it rocked the entire industry the first few months. Because I think to
Sure.
everyone's point, we all thought we'd be back by summer. And then, they're just postponing dates, and then dates started getting canceled, and then the agency layoffs hit. And all of a sudden, it was like, whoa, what is the future of touring going to look like? And for me, I know that's probably my favorite part of music. I can't lie. Seeing artists in person, seeing the joy of
For
fans in
sure.
crowds and experiencing those songs live, I don't know. Yeah, I can't put anything above that. And so I've missed that this last 2 years. From
For
where you're
sure.
standing, right?
Mm.
What's next for touring? Is there ever going to be a return to normal, or are we now in a period where there will just be an adjustment? What's your take on that?
I mean, we're obviously going to go back to in real life. I think during the pandemic, everybody dabbled, or not everybody, but a lot of artists would have dabbled in virtual shows, virtual. I mean, not really virtual touring, to be fair, because that would that would require lots of different stops. But virtual shows and different genres have been differently successful with that, right? So electronic music, for example, which is where I originally came from, specifically in the minimal techno segment, I have to say, sadly, I must say that I didn't feel like a lot of innovation was coming in that space, in that genre, because it's not a performance genre, right? So DJs don't, I mean, not to say that they don't perform, but at the end of the day, watching a live stream of a DJ spinning records really arguably is really not that exciting. Okay. So there wasn't so much innovation coming out of that space. But then, of course, when you're dealing in when you're more in a performance scenario with genres that are about live performers and singing and potentially instruments and this and that, then there was a lot more opportunity to play with that. However, initially, I think it was a bit misunderstood. It was a bit in the space, the mindset was like, oh, whatever we're doing in the live space, let's just put that in front of a camera and it's going to work. And that obviously, I believe that we've all moved on from there because it really doesn't work, right? I remember seeing an Uzi show, and I mean, bless him, not his fault, but he was standing on this mini tribune all by himself without a DJ. Even the DJ was in the back end. He was all by himself with a microphone and some lights, and it was just like there was just no vibe, and Uzi is arguably one of the best performers out there. So if he can't even somehow make it happen, then it's really a question of format, that I believe like a lot of people got wrong. I believe that if you want to be in the virtual touring space, then you need to treat this a whole lot more as a TV show, in a way, like you're engaging with an audience that is not right in front of you. There needs to be other elements of getting the audience involved, which wasn't happening. It was just this bland, oh, let me go on stage and do the same thing I usually do at a concert. And unfortunately, that doesn't work. And then if you now have like one camera, or even, maybe if you have two cameras and you have a little vibe, I know. I mean, I saw some really, really crazy live performances, Under Oath, which, Randy Nichols has kind of become the poster boy of having worked it out of what it means to put on a really cool virtual performance for his artists. And there is definitely elements that I hope will also in the future be part of the touring aspect. Like a lot of people are talking about hybrid touring. In the future, it's going to be a mix between performing live and then maybe also recording the show for the virtual audience to a certain extent. I mean, it's a lot more fun to be watching a live stream when you have a crowd. And I think this is the most important thing, that we all had to admit, that without any crowd in the venue, you can't make it pop. Okay, it's just really bland. So I do believe there's definitely a space for hybrid touring. I mean, not to say something like pulling off eight camera settings, etc. It's very expensive. So it will remain to be seen how many of those hybrid shows will really take off. But other than that, I do believe that in real life touring will come back for sure, but there'll definitely be changes to it. I think one of the key things that's going to have to change, or at least in the near future still, while the pandemic slowly runs out, which obviously we don't know how long that's going to take. I think everybody at this point has completely given up on trying to have any speculation as to how much longer this is going to take. And of course, if you're looking at it from a global touring perspective, will we ever be completely 100% corona free anytime in the near future is really debatable. However, so what I think is going to happen, and what I hope what would happen, is that the 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 time horizons for touring will probably change. I mean, this is just my own personal opinion, but this whole idea of planning a tour a year in advance, putting tickets on sale 9 months ahead, and having the certainty that 9 months later you can actually pull this off. I believe we've all come to agree that there is no certainty anymore, and I think what the future of touring will be is that it's going to have to become a lot more ad hoc. It's going to have to become a lot more like, okay, Europe is opening up. Boom, let's plan something real quick and let's roll this out, versus the whole super long time of planning ahead, etc. So I think we're going to have to become a lot more, a lot like be much more in real time with touring. So I know that this, for some artists that just can't work. You don't pull off stadium shows with like a month notice or something, right? So that's going to be really tricky. But for a certain segment of artists that don't travel with a lot of equipment, that don't travel with a massive crew, they have an opportunity over those that have more complicated productions to be able to respond to the market a lot faster. Okay, cool. Certain markets are opening up. Boom, let's go. Because you don't know how long it's going to last. I mean, so far, it's been pretty much a good ballpark to say that, hey, whenever there's summer somewhere, restrictions are going to be lowered and people are going to be much more up for going out into the live space, whereas winter periods, things are, slowly shutting down again. But yeah, I mean, fingers crossed we can go back to proper at some point and none of this will matter anymore. But I think for the next year or 2 years, we'll probably have to keep adjusting to the new environment.
Yo, you hit on a lot of great points in there. For real. Hybrid touring is interesting to me, and I'm not super familiar with the concept, but I'm not that mad at that. I could see the value in, being able to capture your in-crowd performances and then reshare that for people that can't make it.
Exactly.
People actually did try virtual touring where like the shows were region locked, which to me just felt it felt weird. I'll say that. I think.
Well, okay. So let me ask you. So those that were region locked, and this is where I think is the key factor that comes in here. Was it the same? Was it the same show that was recorded the first time around and then just played back in different regions? Because that's what.
Yes, from what I saw,
exactly.
yes, they were the same shows, which was like, you're
and
not
that's like
really
watching
giving
TV.
them something different. Yeah,
No, that's like watching TV. Like I can watch this anytime. I don't think like the fan doesn't. I personally, me as a fan, I would not respond to that because it's like, oh, it's the same thing that I'm seeing that was already happening 3 days ago somewhere else. There's no shout outs to, hey, country XYZ. Like I'm so happy to be here. You know what I mean? Like it is. You feel like you're getting like you're getting secondhand entertainment at that point.
Yeah,
right?
touring's meant to be a much more interactive experience. And I think that many of the virtual platforms have struggled where the best use case I've seen is like they allow you to send emojis, which is
it's like
it's like you're trying. I get it. I don't have a better idea, so I suppose I can't knock this, but I don't want to sit in my living room and send a bunch of like bomb emojis when I'm watching Lil Uzi perform. And I actually saw the Uzi performance that you're mentioning, and it was a bit underwhelming. And I think that Uzi is one of the illest performers I've ever seen.
Exactly.
So to your point, like if he can't get that to feel great, then how are other people going to do it? Exactly. I think more than like the even when we say virtual, I really think the Travis Scott Fortnite type shows are the ones that make sense to me. However, those are super expensive. You're using something with a built-in audience, and that is interactive in a different way than touring is. Because I remember watching that show, and it's like, yo, you got people building and playing the Fortnite game while a massive version of Travis Scott is running rampant through this space that they're used to. Or Roblox, which is another one, where if you do virtual shows like that, cool. I think that there's some long-term potential in that. And working with gaming platforms, like there's a company called the Wave XR, and I don't know if you're familiar with them, but really ill. Adam, who started that, is like really forward thinking. They just did a Bieber concert and they created oh man, I don't know the name of it. It's like it's not a morph suit, but it's the suits that you wear that have all the little dots on them and the motion capture suits.
Oh, wow. This is
And
for the artist or this is for
yeah,
the audience?
for the artist.
For the
And
artist,
so
okay.
the artist, it's a virtual version of the artist performing in this app, but they it cost them a lot to put on this show even virtually. They use a full damn near stadium budget for putting on the Justin Bieber show. So that's also not really a scalable solution. The Bieber one was
Yeah,
pretty ill, but again, we're talking how much money you put into it. Hell
sure,
yeah, it's going to look fire. Do
sure.
you think that there is a lane for up and coming artists in that where it's like, yo, if you don't have a budget, how do you put on a virtual show? Or is it like you're kind of SOL?
Okay, so first of all, I think to what you mentioned with the Travis and Fortnite, I think that was awesome because it was the first time it was ever done. I think it remains to be seen whether that in itself is a format that can work for artists that are not global superstars. And whether it wasn't just like it was cool as it happened, but then repeating it, does it lose the novelty factor, or it's just another guy that's doing that same thing? So I think that's a bit up for debate. Then I have seen some virtual performances on some platforms like Roblox, for example, where the artist was, I mean, and this is a popping artist, don't want to mention his name because, like no hate there at all, but relatively popping artist, and there was nobody. And there was like one avatar hibbling about, and the rest, he was just there. So I didn't really get that part. So that's something that I think. Look, I think it needs to be very clear for the music industry to understand that when we're joining platforms like those, we are joining gamer turf. Okay, so gamer turf, you have some, there's gamers that are super into music, but then generally speaking, it's a gamer environment. You're not really bringing the music crowd onto these platforms yet. I mean, at least I haven't heard of that happening on a bigger scale, right? So I hear of my gamer friends telling me that it's super cool that they are now seeing music performances happening in, on platforms like Roblox, etc. But it's all a novelty factor still. It's not about the music experience. And that's where I just don't know if how we're going to connect with that, and what it's going to take, because what's the point of just performing for the sake of performing in front of an audience that is not necessarily super into music in the first place? And yeah, and I had a conversation with someone recently, in while I was still in Asia, who was telling me that he is going to put on the first metaverse concert festival. In fact, metaverse festival sometime later this year, and yeah. So, and I'm really interested in the space, of course, and how that relates to touring and how that relates to music. And he's somebody that's been putting on a lot of festivals and shows, and in the electronic space a lot as well. And so I asked him a bunch of questions because I didn't really, get where he was going with this. So he was like, yeah. So we're doing, we're doing this festival, la la la. And I said, okay, cool. So how much are you charging tickets? He's like, oh no, it's free. I'm like, okay, all right. So what's the business model then? Because like, how do you pay the artists? And he said, oh no, it's like a complete different thing. It's basically the artists come with their NFT collection, and they're selling their NFT collection to the attendees. And I was like, wait. So it's basically an e-commerce event. And he was like, well, I mean, yeah, so you can basically buy a stage, and you can do this, and you can buy, and it was all about buying. And I said, well, so what about the music now? I mean, this is a music festival. He's like, oh yeah, it sounded very secondary. He was like, oh yeah, it's some recorded set, that we're going to put on. And I'm like, well, if that's the model going forward, then I really don't see that popping off. Um,
I agree.
because right? I mean,
I don't like how money is at the forefront of so many music Web3 NFT conversations, because for me it's not that it's not about that, because people say that and it sounds cliche, but it's genuinely about making good art. And if the only thing that you're pushing on people is the financial benefits or like the
like buy this,
financial
buy that,
incentives for
you
it,
know.
yeah, it
And
creates a disconnect. Like, I just want a super fan that's going to listen to the record 1,000 times. And it's cool if they want to buy it and spend it, but I think that that connection is really, really important. And not to burst that guy's bubble, but
mm.
the first Metaverse Festival actually did already happen.
Oh
It
no, it
happened.
was his first Metaverse festival. To
Oh,
be
okay,
fair,
okay,
sorry,
okay.
yeah. It was his first, yeah. So I guess he was also still trying to figure out the business model there, but it seemed, yeah, it seemed a little dry. It seemed a little like, okay, let me also get involved in that. Look, I'm not hating on anybody trying out innovation. I'm all for innovation, so I think it's really cool for the in real life space to be dabbling with the metaverse and trying to figure out how it works. And it's probably going to take a couple of years to really find a formula where the music doesn't get lost. Um, and one question that I was also asking him, and I mean, I would love to, bring this up in this chat as well. Is so now what happens? Like the artists, and I asked him, so the artists that you're booking, are they now exclusive to you that night? Is it that they're not performing anywhere else so that the fans at least feel like they're going there to see the one guy they want to see who is only here tonight? And he was like, oh, nah. He's like, oh no, the guy can be anywhere, or the artist, whichever genre.
Yeah,
Um, uh,
we had a pretty large platform that reached out to us that highlighted that kind of as a feature, where it was like, oh, you don't even have to do anything. And I was like, what do you mean?
exactly.
And it's like,
Wait,
oh, you license out your name and we create these avatars, and you can
we
send
run
us
with it.
old performance videos, yep, and we'll just do everything, and you license it like it's your show. And I was like, damn, is this the future? Like, am I being like am I like okay boomer? Like, am I here just
Like
not
honestly,
accepting the
right?
new
I
wave?
swear I have been feeling like that every now and then in the whole Web3 conversation where I'm like, "Ah, am I just like, is this is this an age thing? Is this a, but it doesn't sound right to me. I mean, for example, right? The whole thing that the artist doesn't have to do anything, doesn't even have to show, doesn't have to go anywhere. So now then my next question was like, okay, so is it possible that the same artist that you book at your festival that very night can be performing in the metaverse somewhere else at the same time? And he said, yes. I'm like, yeah, but then we're ruining the game, right? Because isn't the whole thing about live music that concept that this person that you're going to see is only here in this moment. And that person is nowhere else. And that's why it's a scarcity factor. And that's why I'm ready to pay X amount of money to be here right now to experience that because the person is only here. But the moment it now becomes a thing where the same artist plays at 12 different shows a night all over the metaverse, like, are we not ruining the market overall? Does that make sense? Like, I just
It
feel like,
does. It does. I think, I'll play devil's advocate for the sake of the conversation.
of
And
course.
maybe there is value in, so okay.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
trying to find a
Trying to
point. I'm
play a good
trying to
devil.
find a point.
Yeah,
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 like,
yeah, exactly. Go.
no, so let's say that I'll use Decentraland, which was a place that held what I believe to be the first metaverse music festival. Could be wrong, but I think that that's how they were marketing it as. So Decentraland has a certain kind of 3D style to it. And maybe you don't like that style. Maybe you prefer a Roblox style. Maybe you prefer a more high quality style like Fortnite. And so you could just choose which version of, like, let's say an artist we have is doing a show, and they simultaneously do a show in all of these different worlds, all of these different metaverses, and you can choose your experience. And
Mm,
so that could be interesting, where maybe people that never, maybe people don't want to go on Decentraland whatsoever. They only want to see it in Roblox. They only want a crypto voxels kind of style where it's like 8-bit and pixelated, or they're native to a game like Sandbox. So they don't want to leave out of their ecosystem. So allowing the artists to host shows in all of these different worlds simultaneously could provide for an interesting viewing experience where I could be looking at you in 8-bit on my phone, in high quality, like regular Unreal Engine type 3D graphics on my TV, another different format on my computer. And so, there's, I don't. That's kind of cool. It still makes it a little
it's
like
a
maybe you
stretch. It's
spread
a
it out,
stretch.
but
It's a stretch. I see where you're coming from, but even there, you could also be performing at different nights in all of these platforms, right?
which to me would make more sense.
Right, exactly. I think the I mean, just take it that fans don't like to see artists lip sync, right? Because it's coming from it's coming from a CD, right? Essentially, or from any kind of digital device, and it's not real, and it's not in the moment, and it's not actually happening, and this is like that on steroids. Right, it's like the artist could be having dinner somewhere; he's not even around. And sorry that I keep mentioning him. That's just something I got used to. But obviously, it's any gendered artist. But essentially, it's really a thing where if you don't create, if you take away the scarcity factor, I think that's a problem. That's not to say that that's a Web3 problem. That's just how we execute it over time, right? And funnily enough, a very big. This has been on our minds here over the past couple of days. One other thing that I'm going to be very interested in seeing is how the agencies are going to deal with that. Are the agencies involved now? Because I mean, when you sign, I think one of the big discussions in 2022 is going to be: is the metaverse in the universe or not? Because isn't it that all agencies sign agreements with the artists saying that they're representing them worldwide and in the universe? Which every time I read that on the booking, on a contract, I was giggling a little bit because it's like, okay, in the universe, yeah, cool. And now obviously we're here, 2022. Now, is the metaverse part of the universe or not?
Yo, that's
So,
actually, I have not heard anyone bring that up. And that is a good point because sometimes I will think like, yeah, you're right, in the universe. Like you read that in the contract and you're like, bro, are y'all expecting us to to be on Mars? But yes, a lot of these big corporations and their lawyers want to protect them against all future potential cases of things
exactly. But
because they
did they
don't know where
think about
technology is
the
going.
metaverse or not? They
I feel
thought
like
about
the
space.
metaverse has to be a part of the. Oh damn! Nah, that's a. Oh, that's
Big
gonna
one, huh?
that
I
there's gonna
think,
be a crazy precedent set
yeah.
for sure with some legal battle that happens over that wording. If
Exactly. So let's see. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how generally the agencies are going to get involved in the metaverse. From what I've been hearing, and throwing no shade here whatsoever, but agencies have not been traditionally very fast adopters of new technologies and innovation. Somebody the other day was telling me how Cameo, in its infancy stage at the very beginning, started reaching out to the agencies and was like, hey, we want to get your artist on board. We want to get, whoever you're representing on board. And they were snubbed. And now, from what I'm understanding, the agencies are all pretty much cut out from all the deals because they're now going directly to the artists because they weren't giving them the time of day. So it's going to be interesting to see how the agencies are going to deal with that innovation. I'm sure a whole lot of conversation and task forces have been set up to be figuring out how to deal with that space. And yeah, I mean, we're obviously at the beginning of a huge movement, something that nobody can deny, something that everybody needs to find their place in, and every industry is going to have to find their place in it. Music is just one of the many industries, but yeah, it'll be very interesting. It'll be very interesting to see how this all plays out, even this year.
Speaking on agencies being slow to adapt to innovation, I think that's the perfect segue into what you guys are creating at Toorly. So, can you give the people um, the JT rundown on this amazing, incredible startup that you're building?
Thank you. Well, I mean, essentially, it all started off um, as just a very basic idea that when artists plan tours, of course, you take your streaming data into consideration, and you take your social data into consideration. But any manager would agree that, I mean, social media data is very limited. I think Instagram gives you, what is it, top 5 cities in the world and top 5 countries or something, which obviously is not very relevant for touring. And Spotify or any of the other DSPs, yes, there's a whole lot more information. However, the sheer situation that an artist could be included in in a playlist, a very big playlist potentially even, and a whole lot of people are listening to that playlist that week or that month, and they would now be getting all of these crazy monthly listeners all over the world, and it's looking really good on your profile to say that, oh, you have that many monthly listeners and whatnot. But are these people really going to translate into people buying tickets? And in most cases, that's a no. Quite frankly, there's a lot of people that I listen to, but I wouldn't want to go and buy a concert ticket for. And, that's just because, there's many reasons for that. It's just that, when I go out, for example, it's more of an upbeat nature. So some of the artists that I listen to that are more down tempo, etc., chances are I wouldn't go to a concert. And so overall, streaming data or the kind of data that we have is quite unreliable. Let's just call it that. Quite unreliable when it comes to touring. And so when I developed the idea for Toorly, I was actually managing my artist in South Africa, and we were gonna. In fact, you played his music. Big shout out, Patrick XX Lee.
Hey,
But yeah, so I was planning his tour in South Africa, and he had a super, and still has a super rabid fan base of people all over the country, and so Spotify had just started in South Africa a year prior to that. So clearly, like, the adoption rate was really spotty. Data is still very expensive in South Africa, so a lot of the kids don't really. Yeah, they still go the traditional model of downloading the songs that they like to play them over and over and over on their phone. So streaming data really was not very reliable at all in the case of South Africa. And so at some point we're like, how are we going to hit 20 cities, up to 20 cities, but not end up in a scenario where we don't have enough fans in one city to make it happen. And in the case of South Africa, it would have been us pretty much organizing the tour. It wouldn't have been the traditional scenario of getting booked at all the various places. So you're working with promoters. South Africa is a very unstructured market when it comes to that. And especially in the kind of sound space that we were in, it was all pretty much like first time promoters, 15, 15, 16, 17, let's say most of them between 17 and 19 years old, putting on shows, not super organized. In many cases, like, I popped their cherry with their first booking contract. They had never seen a booking contract before. And in many cases, I had to get the guardians to sign. So yeah, anyway, a very different scenario. But then it was through that experience that I was thinking, hey, wouldn't it be so clever to have a platform where fans can come on and say who they want to see live, and then share that data with the artist, or make that data accessible to the artist to now be able to plan their tours better. And as most managers know the experience of posting a tour flyer on your profile, and you have all these people that are like, oh, come here, come there, come here. Why don't you come to this city? Blah blah blah. And then you sit there and you spend the next 5 hours scrolling down the comments and to, putting everything into an Excel sheet to try to figure out where exactly the demand is coming from. But then, of course, that's that's a very that's a very tedious exercise, right? So essentially, that's the main premise of Toorly, has been about getting the fan involved in the touring process, and that's really where I see the future of touring going as well. Not to say that nothing's going to take away from the agent, nothing's going to take away from the existing ecosystem. It's not about, even what we are doing is not really disruptive per se, because the music industry doesn't doesn't need to be disrupted, but it just needs to be made. I believe that there's space to make things a lot more efficient and to make it more real time and make it more about, this is who fans want to see right now, and you can use that data to now plan your tour going forward. And that's what we're launching.
Yo, I love that. For me, I looked at it, I was like, as you're providing this new framework for artists to route their tours based off of real demand and real analytics,
Yep.
while simultaneously creating a way for fans to voice their opinions and
Exactly.
have a say in these artist tour routes. And there's smaller areas that may be ignored and smaller venues or smaller cities, and you may not realize the audience pocket that you have there as an artist. And as a fan, you sometimes, you don't even think about the fact that this artist may come through here. It's not even an option, where it's like, oh no, we're not even a major city. Yeah,
exactly. And that's where, I spend a lot of time in underserved markets when it comes to concerts. I lived in Nigeria for over a decade. Nigeria, everybody's talking about Nigerian music right now, and which is awesome, but it's not like concerts are happening there a lot, right? There's a couple of concerts a year at best, and it with international acts coming in. South Africa also, because it's at the end of the world, and Africa as a continent is not particularly explored when it comes to touring. So and then even Hong Kong, I've lived in Hong Kong. Hong Kong doesn't get any shows, any concerts, even though there's a whole lot of money, there's demand, and still artists don't come. So it is basically taking, the world is so big. And I think that there is not enough, artists know that, oh yeah, I've got fans in Belgium and in, all over the world, I've got fans, but it's not this thing of, okay, so why don't you tour there then? Of course, Belgium is one of those places that if you go to Europe, you would pass by, but you're looking at the Asian market, the sub-Saharan market, the Latin market. There's so many areas that are underexplored for talent. And I think right now we're at a point where, there is so many, there's not enough venues. Everybody and their mother wants to go on tour now, right? That's obviously we've all been kind of sitting around for 2 years. Everybody wants to go on tour. Everybody had plenty of time to work on new material. But the reality of it is that in America, you find venues with 20 holds on a date. Right? You find in Europe the same problem. There's just not enough venues. And at the same time, the world is so large. And what we're really trying to make happen with Toorly is, on the one hand, give the fan the opportunity to really get involved, and rally troops and rally other fans together to make it happen. So that's what can happen on the platform, and at the same time, it's also for artist teams to be like, hey, hold on a second, I've actually got thousands and thousands of kids that want to see me in this area, in this region that I've never toured in. And while in America, all the venues are blocked with safe bet artists, safe bet bookings, because let's be real, and that's completely understandable. Promoters have struggled over the past 2 years a lot. A lot of many of them are out of business at this point. So the same way the venues have struggled, so every venue and every promoter is going to want to play it safe. Nobody wants to take a bet on a young up and coming band, on, the kids that are basically have been popping off during the pandemic, etc. Nobody wants to really take a gamble, because everyone still needs to plug the holes over the last 2 years, right? But then at the same time, we have all of this talent out there. There are so many artists that were able, especially during this pandemic, where people's focus was very much on consuming music and maybe just music discovery in general. And so many new artists have come up that don't have an opportunity to tour in the markets where they're from, for example, right? So I'm hoping that with Toorly, what we can make happen is that artists and their, and their teams are starting to look beyond the established markets and say, hey, maybe it's time for me to rock up in the Philippines because there's actually demand there. Maybe I can book a tour around around the Asian region. Maybe I can, maybe I can tap markets that I've never been in before. And the thing is that every market, like every industry, was shaken up by COVID. And I believe, especially the touring industry, was obviously like everybody is now ready, in theory, should be ready for innovation. Right. And I think this is where we're coming in right at the right time. The fans are hungry. And it's really just a matter of like getting them involved and letting them say, hey, this is where we want to see you. There's another 2,000-3,000 people, 500, whatever it may be, that also want to make the show happen. And yeah, so it's we're coming in. I believe that we're coming in right on time.
That I would agree. I would say that I think people's mindset, and we talked about tons of reasons why it has shifted through the pandemic, but you're empowering, artist teams to create relationships with venues, which is low key unheard of. For us, I'll say that as a manager, most of the time we're hiring a TM, or even when I'm dealing with TMs, you do deal with promoters, but you're rarely actually talking with the venue. You're talking with the venue the day of and setup and all of that. But there's a lot of negotiating power in being able to deal directly with venues. And for so many of the things that you've highlighted, with venues struggling with the pandemic and the strain on agencies, it hasn't really made that relationship any easier. So if I'm an artist or manager or even agent, hearing this, how could I get involved with Toorly?
Well, I think it's mainly about first of all, the mindset needs to be the right mindset, right? So if the mindset is the right mindset to say that, hey, let's go where people want to see me. And obviously it's awesome if I find space in my home market and if I can tour there, that's awesome. But then if that's a struggle, look outside, because fans are so excited, especially in markets where not a lot of people are coming through, and the love that you will receive over there is like tripled over just being in your own in your own space. So if it's about getting involved, it's literally just about coming on the platform, claiming the page. And if you're now planning something moving forward in the touring in the touring space, give fans the opportunity to come on the platform and say, hey, I want to see you. So it's, it would be as simple as putting up something on Instagram stories saying, hey, I'm planning a tour. Where do you guys want to see me? Boom. There's no more swipe up link, but, click on the link, and have fans basically come on and say where they want to see you. And then take a moment to analyze that data. And then from there, make your moves or start planning, right? And another opportunity on Toorly is also that promoters can have pages, venues can have pages. They can position themselves where the fans, fans on the platform are also following promoters, following venues, etc. So you're building a whole database of understanding that, hey, okay, cool. So let's say I want to go to South Korea. What venues are there that my fans are also into? Like, what are the venues that my fans are frequenting? Because that way I can assess whether that's a great venue to work with or a great promoter to work with. So over time, it will build itself as an invaluable resource to just understand the various markets. And another thing that we have on Toorly in the analytics is that you can actually filter your fans by location and see who for example, who do my Nigerian fans listen to locally. Like, what local artists are they into? And if you're now planning a tour, maybe you want to consider doing a collaboration ahead of time. So now you can see the fan base that you already have in that market. How does that correlate with the local market, the local artists, or the domestic artists in the sense, like, nationwide or specifically by city? And it just gives you a complete different global outlook of what your fan base is like. A lot of times, artists and artist teams tend to look at fans as this one homogeneous mass of people, right? It's like my fans. It's like this gigantic sea of people, but that's not what it is. Like, fans are all different around the world. Your fans, in some cases, you can have, you can have you can be in a certain genre of music and have fans in different markets that are actually really like your music, but they're actually not from the hip hop space, or they're not, they're from a different genre, and they somehow discovered you in a different circumstance, and so you end up discovering so much more about the various markets around the world, and how you can engage with that market. And I think that's a huge opportunity for artists and artist teams to get involved, and to really understand their market so much better and see what you can do with it. Look, we're just the ones providing the data at the end of the day, right? So it's now up to really savvy managers to now see that and say, hey, okay, that's cool. Okay, so these are the markets where I really didn't expect to have a lot of fan base, but now all of a sudden I'm understanding how many people are there. And somebody who clicks on, who actually bothers to go on a platform to say that they want to see you live, believe me when I say that those fans are a whole lot more committed than a follower on Instagram. A follower on Instagram can follow you for your swag, follow you for whatever, the girlfriend you have. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many reasons for why people follow on Instagram, but it isn't necessarily at all tied to whether they would come to watch a show for you. So I think this is it's a real opportunity to now have an audience that is only focused on live events. And also, it's, it has a social networking factor in it, that the friends that I have, that I follow, I see which artists they follow and what concerts they want to go to, and what requests they're launching, because basically we give fans the opportunity to come on Toorly and start a request. Say, hey, I live in this city and I want to see this artist in my city. Boom. And then I can rally the troops around it and make this happen, and get, at least have a shot at making it happen. And that's something that was, that has never happened before.
Wow, JT. Money Trees is all about planting ideas and watching them flourish. And I cannot wait to watch Toorly flourish. I really
Thank
cannot.
you.
This is fire. So I have a couple of questions before I let you go.
Sure.
And it's interesting because I'm thinking now, I literally just had this as we're sitting here talking. So people can come on and request based off of their location. But as we were talking about earlier with all of the different metaverse worlds, and with the rise of Web3, and even though you and I both can agree that we need to be back outside IRL touring, do you see any potential in incorporating Web3 metaverse worlds into the space? And one direct example I can think of is, okay, cool, I'm in Jacksonville, Florida, and I can request for an artist to come to my city. But what if I am an avid Decentraland gamer or sandbox gamer? Could I potentially go on Toorly and request for artists to do a show in the metaverse? Maybe there's a larger crowd for a particular artist's audience. And it makes me think about like Twitch streamers, where artists can have songs that are on Twitch streams that endear themselves to that audience, and not even realize that the streamer is using their song as sync, because with the new partnership deals, like, they just get the check after the fact. So it's kind of interesting thinking about, could you do metaverse requests as well?
For sure. I think it's funny you bring this up. This is actually one of the conversations we've been having over the last couple of days. Um, that is definitely a space we also want to tackle. That's one, and then also the other thing, the other opportunity is where, as you mentioned earlier, right? The Justin's show, super hyper expensive. Any kind of, it doesn't need to be up to all the way that level, but any kind of VR experiences, AR experiences are quite expensive to produce. So, but if you were now able to essentially, let's say as an artist, create a request and say, hey, this is the project that I'm working on. This is something, this is a really cool thing. It's going to happen in the metaverse, or it's going to happen in, any kind of other space, any kind of similar space like that. And I want to know how many people would be up for me making that happen, right? Then we on the back end, what we can log is what time zones everyone is in. So essentially, that would be an opportunity to now say, okay, cool, there's different, whether it's in the virtual space or even just, even in the metaverse, let's not forget, we still live on this planet, right? There's still time zones, and there's still people that are not necessarily going to be online at 5 a.m. in the morning, right? So essentially, I do believe that there's a huge opportunity for that to connect together and make specific shows happen in the metaverse as well. And because there is such a substantial financial factor involved in making some of these experiences happen, I believe that it's ever the more relevant and important to have an understanding of how much demand there is for that, and also where in the world that demand is coming from, right? So one of the things you were mentioning at the very beginning of our session actually is, we spoke about virtual touring and about the opportunity to get fans from different areas involved that usually don't get these shows to pull through, which I think is super amazing. However, nobody has, or a lot, let me not say nobody because that wouldn't be fair, but it hasn't really become a thing yet to look at how the pricing should adjust. Like, for example, if you're doing something in the European time zone, you have the entire African continent underneath, which is in your time zone. But because the tickets are so prohibitively expensive for kids in the African, in the African space, that even though the opportunity exists to now key into the virtual shows because they are no longer geographically limited, but then the price factor becomes prohibitive. So I believe that if we want to go into this space and really develop it, the world is so big. We just need to look at the local scenario everywhere, and not only bring in geofencing, but also bring in different price points, so that a kid in South Africa can now go and watch a show like that, but cannot be paying $25 for that because that's just too much for that person's environment. So it's really important that we're looking at the holistic picture. Look, there's so much inefficiency in the live music space, I believe, and it's really and the Web3 opportunity is giving us the chance to make everything much more inclusive. So it's really just a matter of getting it right, and not only having, a bunch of people sit together in the States and in Europe and to work out all the formulas for this. I think it's really important that we make an effort, that everybody makes an effort to really look at the world as a whole, from a holistic perspective. How do we bring inclusivity? How do we make that translate in the metaverse space as well?
JT, I
Yes.
have to give you flowers and thank you for coming and dropping absolute gems today. This is
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's crazy because we talk all the time, but I'll say I learned some shit. Funny enough,
Hey,
I really did. It wasn't all just
I always
we were able
learn
to
from you
explore.
too.
Yeah, we were able to explore some ideas we've been talking
For
about
sure.
and just build on top of that. And yeah, like I said, I'm really excited to see Toorly flourish. I do think that this is perfect timing. I think, user fan behavior will bounce back. People are very excited to be outside and to find new ways to facilitate touring. I think artist teams have so much to benefit from this. You know, that was one of the things that when you first told me about it, I'm like, yo, like I'm in. Like I need access to this data to better route tours and better find ways for us to do what it is that we do.
Exactly. And I really, big shout out. Also, I want to give to Fan to Band and Fan Made. We're partnering with them for Toorly, and they really get it. I have to say, I have been in a lot of conversations as of recent, of course, or even over the years, and that fan first thinking is something that the industry really needs to come along with. Like it is still very underexplored, and really shout outs to them. They really worked it out. They have such a great vision, and it's very much in line with what we are doing as well. And I'm really looking forward. To really explore that space so much more and get the fans so much more involved. That's really where the future is at. So yeah, it's going to be an exciting year, and we're launching into private beta very soon.
Hey.
So whoever is interested in trying out Toorly, please request early access on toorly.com. It's TOORLY.com. And we're going to start letting people into our private beta by next week. So it's going to be super exciting to see where the journey goes, and looking forward to having you part of it, of course, as well, Khufu.
Of course.
Cool.
I will say, on top of the highlighting something that industries need to catch up on, women in tech. You have an awesome assortment of women on your team. And not assortment, that's the wrong word. What the fuck am I? That's like a snacks. Like, no, like you have a great, what's the word? Conglomerate. You have a great collection's the wrong thing too. I'm fucking it all up. Anyway, JT, I think that women in tech are very, very important. And the fact that you have found such talented, such smart, such capable women to help build this platform has me excited about it. Because that's something the industry is dramatically behind on, where it's like, I don't know how many rooms I go into where it's just all cis white men. And so
well, it's
shout out to that.
Thanks. No, I have an amazing team. I'm super, super blessed. It wasn't our intention to be so women focused. Actually, it wasn't. It's not like we necessarily went out there with that. But I'm very proud to say that every single person that is on our team is there because I felt that they were the best person for the job, the best person for the role. And it so happens that most of them are women, but not all of them. We do have some guys on our team and as well. But yeah, thank you, Khufu. Look, I think it's a great time to be alive. It's a great time for so much innovation to be coming out, and the pandemic, I guess the blessing in disguise is that it just shook everybody so much and gives an opportunity for all of us to innovate and just look at doing things differently going forward, and hopefully much more efficient, and hopefully just much more inclusive overall. And yeah, so let's go 2022.
Let's get it. I am going to let you get out of here. I have 2 questions before you go. I ask everybody on the show, what is your seed phrase? And so seed phrase in like Web3 terms refers to a 12 or 24 word account recovery key that you're given when you set up your crypto wallet. I tell people that seed phrase is not scary enough. It just isn't, because if you lose your seed phrase, then you lose access to your NFTs and your cryptocurrency and everything that is in said wallet. So here on Money Trees, since we're planting seeds, we have repurposed the term seed phrase. And so now seed phrase is the quote, slogan, motto that embodies what it is you're building in the world. So, Jenny Tan, what is your seed phrase?
All right. Make shows happen. That's it. Boom.
Oh, I like that. I like the play on words there. Make shows happen.
Exactly.
Je- Jenny makes shows happen and she makes shit happen.
Well,
So
no, it will actually be the fans making it happen. But I would, I would have been the lucky person to have had the opportunity to provide the platform to make it happen. But yeah, it's about making shows happen.
and lastly, we are going to list the one of one Jenny Tan Money Trees number 9 note
Ayy.
up for sale. What is the price going to
Oh,
be?
damn. You did not prepare me for this one. I mean, you didn't prepare me for the question before, but you certainly didn't prepare me for this one. Do we have to set it right now? Because I'm not sure.
We do not have to. It is guest choice.
Uh-huh.
You will be the first guest that we had to postpone, and the first one I got to postpone the questions.
Oh, no. Oh,
I
no. You
see you,
see a
Jenny. I
pattern.
see
You
you.
see a
You're like you
pattern.
keep it
You
waiting.
see
You
a
keep it
pattern.
waiting. No, it's
Well,
smart. It's smart. I see you. It's marketing rollout. That's what that is. You can't give them everything at once.
can't
You're
get a
like,
manager.
no, I'm here.
Because at the end of the day, the price, it's almost like if any of the things still make sense a year from now, then it would be worth it. If whatever I was saying now was not making sense to anybody 12 months from now, damn, it wouldn't be worth much. So let me get back to you on that.
All good, yo.
All right.
Jenny, thank you for
Thank you
joining
so
us,
much. Thanks
and
for having
you
me.
enjoy the rest of your night.
Thank you. All the best. Thanks so much, Khufu. And shout outs to Money Tree. Really happy to have been part of it. Number 9, even though, as you put it down, it's a number 9.5.
For recording purposes,
Exactly.
you know.
All right. All the best. Good night. Ciao, ciao.
All right, later.
Bye. Bye.